So, welcome to another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show, a show where I bring you champion people who have, a knowledge that they can share with us, a knowledge that we need. And today it's gonna be very interesting because we're gonna talk about finance. We've spoke about finance a long time ago on the show, so it's good to have somebody who can bring us the knowledge back, especially after the what we the pandemic that we are we are right now trying to manage. So it's going to be very 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 important. So for just to let you know, we're going to the US today, and my guest is Sabrina Protic, and she is today we're going to talk about being your own banker. So she'll have the opportunity to explain to us what it all means. And but first of all, I think we'll get to know her a little bit and have a background, and then just have a great conversation. So don't hesitate to participate, give your insight, ask question, let us know where you're watching from, and let make this show dynamic, because I know that the knowledge that she's going to bring is amazing. So take the opportunity to educate yourself, but also if you already have some knowledge, to get to help others, the other participant, to get enough knowledge in the finance side. So let's start. So as I said, have your paper, have your pen, because you're gonna learn a lot. Let us know where you're watching from, and please participate, ask questions, be part of the conversation. So let's start and bring Sabrina with us and start, this amazing conversation. Welcome to another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show, the show that is brought to you by the Biray Telekima Global Leadership Organization.
Feel is important is if you just look at the word compassion, when it's behavior, it's something that can be learned, and it is something that we can embody through habits and through our daily actions.
Like, what can I do now with this all experiences that that I have? And for me, it's knowing who I am, believing in myself, and trust, and have confidence that yes, this has happened.
To get this idea that if we interject this wisdom intentionally, I call them needle movers. It's the needle mover that's missing.
I was getting my first computer when I went into undergrad, right? And so I think that stick with what you're passionate about. And if you're passionate about learning technology, you're in a great space, because technology touches every industry.
So welcome, Sabrina. Welcome to the Greatness Engineering Hour show, and I'm very excited today to have you, to host you, and to learn from you, because I know that you're bringing a lot today. and I'm really excited for the audience. But before we get to all the excitement, just wanted to ask you to introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, and in a nutshell, what you do, and if you have a mission, a purpose, just share with us.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me into this international world. I'm so excited to be on this platform, the Greatness Engineering Hour show. I'm just excited to be sharing this moment with you. My name is SABRINA Protic, and that word Protic is Serbian. I am not Serbian. Most people try to figure that out. What is Protic? It's kind of an odd name, and that name came from my husband's side of the family. I am a wife and a grandmother. I am a grandmother of twin 18-month-old granddaughters, and also their 10-year-old sister. So my life is rich and full. I have an adult son, an adult daughter, and on my husband's side, we just brought in a new baby girl. So we're very excited. His side, we've got a 2-year-old grandson, and now he has a sister. So we are enjoying the riches of life. And we were just talking about this yesterday. We talk about our values, we talk about our mission, and we talk about everything that we do. But everything that we do is about family. So we have to celebrate our families and protect our families. And I'm going to talk to you today about being the hero in your family, because we're the ones that our little ones look up to. And we're the ones that our children look up to. So we have to set the example for that. I'm very excited about sharing those things with you.
Fantastic. And as you said, your wife, your mother, your grandmother, so doing a lot. So, and that brings me to ask you, how are you doing all of this? And how did keep going, especially in an area in finance, and then keep, empowering people? Where do you find all this energy?
So I'm what's called a solopreneur. This is what I do pretty much full time. And the things that I do around it kind of support that and elevate that. So last year, I actually finished a career in corporate operations. So I kind of honed my experience in on controlling finance and money and operations. So that's always kind of been my forte. But I'm a people person. I've always loved people. So my transition out of that corporate environment was to go into something that continued to help people. So I was already an author. In October 2019, I launched a book on my own, a published author, called Growing Ageless, Think Young and Live Younger. And here's my book.
Wow. And we're probably going to talk a little bit about it, because I was so shocked, when we're not going to talk about your age today, but I was so shocked when people told me your age. I'm like, it cannot be. So you basically embody whatever you put in this book, and that's amazing. But before we get there, just want to ask you, how did you break through into finance, and what do you do as a certified finance coach?
Yes,
just to set the scene.
So this book really had a lot to do with that. So I launched this book in October 2019. As you know, the pandemic rolled around somewhere around March of 2020. So my golden plan was to really run with this book and get out and teach the world about the value of managing your life. So I became a certified life coach. That was my master plan. Well, the pandemic came along, and the career job that I had was kind of taken off the table because of the pandemic. And I thought, people are really suffering right now. They got caught. A lot of us got caught financially because we weren't prepared to take care of ourselves aside from our corporate jobs, because they all, everything that protected us, our income, our health insurance, our life insurance, our pension plans, were all centered around our employer. So we never really had to be responsible for those things. And as I got out on my own, I thought, why not do a service to the community and educate them on the financial side of things? Because we're hurting. Yes, the pandemic was there, but the aftermath is we weren't prepared. So I got my license in what's called financial services. I became a financial coach, and that became my mission, to go out educate families and communities on how to become your own banker, how to, and we'll talk about that, how to manage that side of your life, how to be prepared, how I call it your financial go bag, how to be ready, regardless of what happens in your life, regardless of employer, regardless of, something else happens, a divorce, regardless of retirement, to be prepared and be your own banker. And so that became my passion, is helping us get back on our feet financially and to be prepared. And that's why I stand before you here today to cover those elements of that, because we don't do enough planning when it comes to our finances. We react. We're not proactive. We react.
So, okay, before we continue, I think there's quite a lot of, we have a lot of people here. We have Liliane. Liliane is watching from Switzerland, and she's on holiday. But despite being on holiday, she wants to participate. We have Florence. Florence is here in Perth, so she's watching from Perth, so same city as where I am. So really, really good. And she's saying congrats on your book, which is really good. So I mean, talking about preparing people for to take control of our finances. So what do you do concretely? Do you have a process or some strategy that you can share with us, that could be really useful for people who are listening?
Yes. So I live in what's called a hurricane state. I'm in Florida, and if you want to be prepared, you'll have your hurricane preparedness kit, or some people call it a go bag, but you'll be prepared. And there are certain items that you cannot live without. You've got to have batteries. You have to have a flashlight. You have to have some foods that don't rely on electricity. You have to have water, and just all types of components. And you do well to have those things in place before the hurricane comes, before the disaster comes, because you don't want to try to run to the store and buy those things. Stores are wiped out. They're wiped out. The minute we get word of a hurricane, I'm gonna tell you what happens here. You're in line just trying to buy water. The shelves are wiped clean of water. So at our home, we keep quite a bit of water. We keep paper essentials. We just maintain the things that we need. So we stay prepared in case something happens. Well, the same thing happens financially. We should have our financial go bag ready. We should have our financial emergency kit ready. As I said, be your own banker, be in control. Well, what are some of those things that go in there? You should have a will. You should be prepared in case something happens to you, that you've managed your estate. You should have documents for your bank account, so that no one has to search and find out. And I'm sure you've seen movie stars and everything, and no one could find their will when they passed away. No one could have access to their bank accounts and their funds. No one could find their life insurance policy. No, and this goes on and on and on. So there are things to be financially prepared that we need to have inside of our financial emergency kit. So when we talk about being your own banker, there are certain elements, I call those sub-elements, that belong in there. And they are debt, income, mortgage, and education. Those elements should be considered in our financial go bag, our emergency financial kit, so that we are prepared financially in case those 4 items happen. And we'll break those down when you're ready for me to do that. Those are very, very critical. And it is the basis that I educate people on in terms of how to establish that extra fund of money. Go ahead.
So you've talked about debt, income, education, and I've missed
Mortgage.
another.
Mortgage. M for mortgage.
M for mortgage, yes. So those 4 key things that we need to have. So how do we make sure we have it? And I think that's really what I want you to develop, to let us know exactly, for each area, each item, how do we do that? How do we make sure that we keep it in, we keep focus on that, and if there are method that you feel like we should follow, or we should adopt to be able to do that.
So we'll talk about debt. We'll break that down. And I tell you, when I talk to people, this is the one area that, if I'm talking to couples, husband and wife, they kind of look at each other, because a lot of families and households don't really realize how much debt they're in. And then secondary, how to take care of that debt if something happens to them. Because lenders, sad to say, they're not in the emotional business. They're not in the business of feeling a certain way or a certain type of emotion because something happens to us. We're legally bound and responsible for our debt. So let's think about debt for a reason. I'd like to just have a minute and do a fireside chat with our listeners. Why do we incur debt? Well, we incur debt because sometimes we just can't afford the purchase. I'm having a little one-on-one chat here to help us get our arms around this. Sometimes we just can't afford it. Or we postpone the payment. We think we'll have the funds at a later time. Sometimes we just binge spend. Pre-pandemic, the girlfriends would go out on a shopping spree and we'd come back with bags and, right, I know you've done it. And we say things, oh, look at how much I saved. I bought this dress and normally it's $100 and I only paid $50. Look how much I saved. But the other side to that is look how much you spent, and it's nothing to go out and spend a couple $100 binge shopping with girlfriends. Sometimes we do emotional spending. Maybe something emotional has happened to us and we feel good to go out and buy a pair of shoes, or, we feel good when we come back. Sometimes it's a lack of savings and something hits us and we don't have the money. For instance, I just had to have the air conditioning replaced in my car, and that was $1,800.
Wow. Living
in Florida, you can't do without your AC riding around. Do you have those types of funds available to you? Emergencies occur, medical emergencies, loss of income if you lose a job. And sometimes, sad to say, we just don't care. There's reckless spending out there, and people are amassing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of debt. And one of the weakest areas I see, and I want to talk to parents for a minute, banks are notorious for giving our kids credit cards. They're issuing these debit cards and credit cards, well, particularly credit cards. Debit cards are tied to bank accounts, but they're issuing these credit cards to young people who haven't been educated on debt and spending. And it's nothing for a young person to amass thousands of dollars of debt. They can't pay it, and mom and dad have to step in and resolve that. So inside of this preparedness kit, we want to consider the debt. So why is it? We want protection from that debt. Just like when we get ready for a hurricane, we want protection from the hurricane. Well, here are some ways we can get that protection. Pay cash whenever you can. Whip out the green instead of the plastic, right? If you don't have the green, don't buy it. That's simple. Avoid overspending or unnecessary spending. Do you really need 2 of something? Maybe just get 1. Do you really need an extra something? Is that something you need to survive for the week? And here's one of my biggest things. Save, 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 and have cash in the bank. That is one of the most critical. We're going to talk about setting up that third bank account aside from savings and checking. We also want to plan. Get your financial affairs in order so when you have to purchase something, you can pay cash. I was able to pay for my air conditioning repair. Secure scholarships and purchase college tuition plans. And we'll talk about that later on in the E section. But we don't want to get that deer in the headlight look when our kids are close to considering their careers and we haven't helped them prepare. And consider, here's a term for the audience, consider a survivorship, beneficiary, trust plan to cover debts for loss of life or accelerated death benefits. I want to underscore that. Consider what's called a survivorship, beneficiary, or trust plan to cover debts for loss of life or accelerated death benefits. Husbands and wives, here's a scenario. You have 2 streams of income. Something happens to one of you, living or a death occurs, and now you are responsible for that debt. the debt of two people instead of one. If you have a beneficiary plan in place, a survivorship plan in place, you're able to resolve that debt. You're able to pay for that debt without going into your savings, without borrowing money, or without having charge-offs, without having your credit affected for 7 to 10 years. So that is one of the best things we want to have inside your go bag is some type of survivorship beneficiary trust plan in place so that when something happens and that income is removed for loss of life or medical reasons, you can resolve that debt and take that pressure off of you. So you always want to consult with an attorney for some legal issues on who covers that debt, because each state is different. In Florida, we're a community state, which means it doesn't matter who signed for it, we're both responsible. Kind of crazy. So now we got the D in our bag.
So yeah, so you got the D in our bag, and there's been, those are actually simple things, but I don't know, we don't do it. We just get dragged into, those shopping spree and, wanting things that we can't afford. And by the time we realize the debt level is just, too much, and we keep on, we don't stop in a way. It's like being addicted to debt and keep coming. And that's why, we have that. But how successful are you with people? What do? You must be also playing with their mindset, because these are simple things that we are asked to do, but we don't do them. So how do you make people shift?
Yes. So part of what I do as a financial coach, I'm licensed in financial services. My official title is I'm a financial coach. One of the services that I offer is a debt reduction plan. And it's a free service, particularly to my clients, but I will offer that to anyone. We do a free debt reduction, because what we found out is with this pandemic, most people were not prepared for financial emergencies. The pandemic put us in a financial emergency. People were losing income. They were losing jobs. They were not prepared. There were shutdowns and lockdowns. And I can recall even people taking and hiding money. They were not prepared. So we have a mechanism in place. Your financial game plan should include a debt reduction plan. If you're not debt free, what I'd like to do is get you to debt free status. It is possible to be debt free. It's all in money management, getting your arms around that. Sure, we can have that beneficiary trust plan in place, but in the meantime, let's control the spending and control reducing that debt. And I'll put at the end how people can contact me to get on that free debt reduction program. That's a really big help. Let's get our arms around that. And that is part of my coaching with my clients.
So we're gonna have a small break and continue with the financial kit after the break. But before we do that, there are some comments, and so there's a comment on the binge spend. So that's the one. And we have Pat. Is joining us from South Africa, Johannesburg. So she's talking about the emotional spending, which is very dangerous. We also have Princess from South Africa as well. So she's saying that it's a very important topic. So we're gonna come back. So for those watching or joining us just now, my guest today is Sabrina Protic. She's based in the US, and we're talking about being our own banker. And we've started to talk about the financial kit, but we're taking a break, and we'll be back to continue the conversation. Don't go anywhere. So we are back. We are back with Sabrina, and I just saw a comment from. So that's from African Women Economic and Entrepreneurship Forum. So where they, because they're based in Africa, so they said the principles differ in each continent, but the theory is the same. So thanks for sharing. Yes, finance is finance wherever we are. It's the same. So we've talked about the debt, and at the end of the show, you let us know about the plan, the recovery plan that you have. So the next item is income. So what about income?
Oh, I'm excited to talk about this because a lot of people have lost income. Well, they lost it because of the pandemic. They lose it because of illness. But let's kind of identify what income is. Income is your ability to work, to draw in some type. It's an exchange, basically. It's an exchange of your labor, whether you work for someone else or you work for yourself. It's an exchange of your resources and your time for monetary gain. So we know what that is. So what happens when you're not able to exchange that resource for monetary gain? Well, the inability to work due to health issues, such as hospitalization and long or short-term medical therapies and treatments, can reduce or stop a household income. And I'm sure your audience probably know it, regardless of what country you're in. How many times have you taken food to someone, given them money because they lost their income? I know I've done it. Inability to work. Maybe they're flat on their back, sick, and you've done things, donated to things to help them because they don't have that financial resource coming in because they're not able to trade those resources for income. So another thing that impacts our income is medical care. The cost is astronomical, and in some cases, certain types of treatments are not even covered by insurance. So we think we might be prepared. And again, as one of your listeners stated, each country is different, but the principle is the same. When there's health care involved, oftentimes there are expenses associated with those things that can drain or deplete our income. And I have a few statistics. In 2013, between 2013 and 2016, 66% of bankruptcies were tied to medical issues. Now that's in the United States, but 66% of medical of bankruptcies were tied to medical issues. So medical issues impact our income significantly. That means even if you're working, even if you have income, you may not have enough to resolve. Remember, we're talking about what's going in that emergency kit, what's going in that bag. So now here's an emergency. We have a threat of income. We have something that's threatening to take it away, like a hurricane or a tornado. What are we going to do? Well, here's some things that impact the income. We mentioned failing health. That can stop I've had to take sick leave off. Fortunately, my employer paid, but there are some jobs that don't pay sick leave. And families are struggling because they miss 1 or 2 weeks of pay. Injuries, a broken leg or what, you can't walk, critical or chronic illness, such as a cancer, something that keeps you from working, a terminal illness where you're writing out your last couple weeks, months, even years, and a disability. Perhaps you've injured your back and you no longer can work. So these are some things like a tornado that threaten our income. And of course, death and loss of life significantly. So if you have a 2-income household and one person dies, now that income's been removed and it's been taken away. Well, how do we protect our income? What are we going to put in our financial kit to protect our income? Well, we want to establish a financial plan, much like we've talked about today. This is what we're talking about right now. Establish a financial plan. You can establish a trust fund. Get with an attorney or your banker and set up a trust fund. You can also establish accelerated death benefits. We call those living benefits, and that's something that I specialize in. You can set up a living benefits plan so that if something happens to you medically and you're still living, and you can no longer work, and it's a critical, chronic, or terminal illness, you can draw from that living benefits plan. And that is really your third bank account that we talked about, because most of us are familiar with a checking account. We're familiar with a savings account, but now we can have a living benefits account. It's a fund of money that can be set aside that can pay out while you're living or loss of life or death. Another source of income, at least in the United States, because I know I have an international audience, is Social Security benefits. And in the US, those are paid out at age 62. Now, I'm not familiar with other countries, if they have a certain type of income plan set up when you reach a certain age, but those are just some of the items. But the best plan is to have a plan. Think of the what ifs and make proactive decisions to prepare for what we call possibilities, for the events that can impact you now and years to come. So again, having that kit ready, having those items that protect your income, financial plan, trust fund, a living benefits fund, or some type of state governmental assistance. So we've kind of gotten that out of the way. Do we have any comments on the income?
So we have some comments. So there's Liliane. She was saying that income can also be obtained from income streams. So, and the earlier we start thinking of it, then we can save ourselves the headache. So life is not straight line. So we should get our head around this and pass it on to the next generation. So that's the full planning and really thinking about generational income or wealth instead of just something that is just going to be at a certain time. And I think that's sometimes the challenge that we have, as when we work, we don't always think about the next generation or building for the next, even for the next period of our life. So, and I think it ties with what you're talking about, that the best plan is to have a plan, because anything can happen. So that's whole as a comment that I have. And I think the third item is in the financial kit is what is it? It's
mortgage, infra mortgage. Let me float back to that income for a minute, and I want to thank your listener for saying that. There are some streams of income that we can have in place. So there are investment accounts, there are 401k accounts. There are things that are called retirement accounts. They're called annuities. So there are certain types of accounts that can maintain streams of income. But that's all a part of our financial game plan, and that's something that I do. And I'll be talking with the guests later and how they can get in touch with me to talk about those financial streams of income. But the main thing to think about is, again, the word protection, protecting that income in case something happens. So I want to thank your listener for tuning into that. So now we're going to talk about mortgage. Now I want to go mortgage/rent. So I call that keeping a roof over your head, because many of our audiences, they rent or they own. And really, do you own? You own if you have your mortgage balance at zero. But if you're sharing that with a lender, then you're basically renting with the option to own, is what I call it. But there's a cost to keep a roof over your head. So it doesn't matter if it's a home, if it's a flat, if it's a villa, it doesn't matter if it's a condo, you still have to pay someone to stay there unless you own it outright. So let's talk about some of these elements. Remember, this is our financial go bag. It's our bag of protection. So now, how are we going to protect that mortgage or that rent in case something happens to us and we can't pay it? So a couple of things. Now, a lot of this is US based. Again, it may be different in other countries, but there are certain elements in place legally that can protect a mortgage in case something happens. To protect a lender, this is the person that's lending the money. So if you own a home, there are vehicles in place to protect the lender in case I default and I can't pay. and that's called PIM insurance, or qualified mortgage insurance, or MPI. So it's PIM or MPI. And sometimes when you buy a property, the bank may require you to have that insurance because it protects the lender. Because lenders know that things happen. Someone can get sick, get cancer, lose their job, all types of things. They can no longer make that mortgage payment, and they want to make sure they're covered. So if you're buying a property and you are required to buy MPI or PIM, remember that is to protect the lender. That's not to protect you. That protects the lender. And so I want to make this clear. Now, we want to talk about how to protect you if something happens to you. Well, there's something called mortgage title insurance, which protects the heirs, like my son and my daughter or my husband, in case the title is not free and clear. So oftentimes when you buy a home, at least in the United States, they do something called a title search. They search to make sure there's no liens against that property. Very, very, very important. People have lost their homes because a good title search wasn't done, only to find out that somebody else owned the home. And they've paid tens of thousands of dollars to purchase the home, and somebody else owned it. So a really good title search is imperative, especially if there's loss of life, and let's say you die. Now your kids are wanting to inherit your home, and they find out somebody else owned it because a good title search is not done. So you want to get that title insurance done. Mortgage protection via life insurance is another way that you can protect your home. So a lot of people think that life insurance is a death policy. Mm-hmm. It's something that you get to pay for a funeral or burial cost, at least in the United States. But a lot of people are unaware that you could make your mortgage company a beneficiary on your life insurance policy. I see you raising your eyebrows. People didn't know that. And what happens, let's say I'm going to use this crazy number. Let's say you have $1 million life insurance policy and you owe $200,000 on your home. If you list your mortgage company, the insurance company will pay the $200,000 first. And the other $800,000 goes to your beneficiaries, son, daughter, husband, wife, whoever's left over. But at least now the family is not in threat of losing the home. So now you kind of get in the picture. Now you're seeing what's happening. Put these things in your financial plan, in your emergency go bag. Now, you don't have to list the mortgage company as a beneficiary, but it would be wise to have enough life insurance to pay that mortgage off so that in the event of your death, or if you're living, you don't lose that home. That home stays within the family. If you're leaving a home to your children, make sure you've got or husband or wife, make sure you've put the proper measures in place so that if something happens, the home is paid off. Mm-hmm. They don't have to worry about being put out of their homes. And I'm sure your audience have probably seen families, when someone dies, they've lost a home. They're put out. Maybe the wife and the kids are put out because there was no protection plan in place to cover that, to make sure that residence was taken care of. So a living benefits term policy in the United States offers the insured the ability to make a claim for a critical or chronic illness or even a terminal illness. The cash received from the face value may be used to pay the mortgage or any other expenditure at their discretion. So that's called a living benefits term policy, and it can be drawn upon. You don't have to die to get it. Mm-hmm. It can be drawn upon if someone has a lingering illness, critical chronic illness, to help them still pay that rent or pay that mortgage. It covers rent too, just to make sure that the family is not left out. an alert. So we want to make sure that we have this in our go bag. And I think this is a really big thing. I've seen families post these GoFundMe accounts. Now, I don't know about other countries, but I've seen GoFundMe accounts here where maybe a mom and her 3 kids are in threat of losing their home because the husband passed away, or maybe he's going through cancer. They can't make that rent payment, or they can't make that mortgage payment, and they're asking for help. And sometimes they've had to move in with a relative because they're not able to afford that. So let's just have some peace of mind here and take care of these very necessary things that can be quite devastating and harm our families. So do we have any comments on mortgage or rent?
So we have Liliane again. So she's saying that mortgage is another issue, but again, it depends on, in the country. In Switzerland, where she lived, the concept is very different. Yes, there are insurance to protect the mortgages, and Europe has a great plan in place. However, they are costly. So that's and I think sometimes that's the blocker. At least from what I've seen here in Australia, they are so costly that sometimes we say, okay, we're not going to need it, but we still have to put it in, and because we never know what can happen, and that's very important. So let's have another break, and we'll be back to talk about the last item in the financial kit. So for the audience, stay tuned, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. So we are back with Sabrina, and we've started, unpacking the financial kit. So we've talked about debt, income, mortgage, and the last item is education. So what about education?
Well, for parents that have children or that are planning to have children, we want to think about what is it our kids are going to do when they leave the home. It's almost like you're happy they're here, but how are we going to get them out? What's going to happen when they become adults? And that type of planning occurs early. I mean, I don't know about you, but we have 2 children. And when they were born, we thought about, well, what do you think they're going to do? Or what are they going to be? And we start assessing their talents as they, started to grow up. Well, this one seems to be good on the piano, and this one seems to be good at fixing things. And we were trying to assess it. What is it they're going to be good at? And how could we support that? Well, we want to talk about educational options here, so that we want to help facilitate them reaching their goals, whether we're here or not. Obviously, as long as we're alive and we're here, we can help our children. Maybe it's start a family business, but there's still costs associated. So when our kids were babies, again, this is here in the United States. I don't know about other countries, and I'm always excited when someone makes a comment about what's going on in other countries, because that educates me. But here in the United States, we bought something called the Florida Prepaid Plan, and it offered 4 years of college for our children. And so when they were maybe 3 years old, we started making that payment every month. It was $62 a month for my daughter because she was firstborn, $72 a month for our son. He was second born. And that went on for about 12 to 15 years. But by the time they graduated high school, they both had 4-year university degrees. And the complete investment was about $8,000 for one and $7,000 for the other. Now, the significance of that is college degrees back then were running around $40,000, $50,000. But because we did advanced planning, because we had our financial game plan in order, we only paid a fraction of that cost. So what that would have been $100,000 really for two kids going to college, and we paid $10,000. Well, no, sorry, 20. We paid about $20,000 total because we had a financial game plan in place. So we want to think about this now. Maybe college isn't the answer. Many people are going off into entrepreneurship. A lot of adults are doing that. Children are looking at doing their own business and starting that, but there's still a cost associated with that. There's the education, there's the training, there's the tools, there's the mentoring. There's still costs associated with that. And so we want to have that game plan in place. So I mentioned there are what's called self-paid tuition plans if you're in the United States. And those self-paid plans, in other words, they have accounts set up where you make some type of monthly contribution, anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000, depending on your child's GPA. That's your grade point average. There are also scholarship programs in place. I know some states offer scholarship programs. I'm not sure about the international audience, but that's a free ride for a number of years, maybe 1, 2, 3 years. That's free. There's state plans, as I mentioned, about the Florida prepaid, and then there's what's called 529 plans that can help you build for your kids. Now, there's some other options. There's trade schools. I don't know if they have this in other countries where you go for a period of time just to learn a specific trade. Maybe you want to be a welder, and you go, maybe it's 2 months, 8 weeks, or 6 months to learn how to be a welder. And that's all you do. You learn how to weld. So those trade schools are less expensive, and they also offer apprenticeship programs, like even being an electrician. You can be in some type of apprenticeship program where you learn from the person who's got years and years of experience and knowledge. And so this reduces the expenses. But remember, mentorship and training, that's an investment, and there's costs associated. Now, there are other costs associated with our children. Let's say they don't want to get some type of education. Maybe they're going to go straight into employment. Maybe they're going to get a job. Well, if anybody's ever raised children, they know that there's an expense associated with that. Parents can't get away from it. Here are some things: transportation. So if your kids don't have a car, maybe you're using your automobile or buying them a bicycle or whatever it takes to go from your home to their job. Uniforms. Maybe there's cost of uniforms for this particular job that they have, or cell phone, or some type of communication tool, or just clothing in general. Maybe it's a professional job. Children aren't born with these items. These items of support come from parents and households. So parents, we still have to think about, again, inside of our go bag is taking care of our children, especially if we are not there to do it. So here's the fact: if something happens to mom and dad, or something happens to mom or dad, who is going to help launch these kids off into their future? Whether it's going to college, whether it's working for someone, or whether it's starting their own business, who is going to help them with these? And they're all financial costs associated with that. Our children are our most precious gifts. As parents, devising a financial plan will start the building blocks for launching them off into independence. Again, we want to prepare for possibilities that could roadblock and stop our children from being able to realize their potential and who they are. So do we have any comments on our children?
We don't have any comment, but I have a comment myself, is that, even if we don't have the same, tools as in the US, but it's the same principle, is to prepare, ahead, for all those expenses that are coming with children. So it's really important to start early and to identify the tools that are going to help us to be able to spend less, going forward, and help them to be able to have their dream, come true, like you said. So I think that's the only thing that I wanted to say. We might not have the same tools, but the principle is the same. We have to prepare, we have to protect the income so that the children can make the most of it when they need it. And Liliane is still here, so she's talking about, parents who
I
have to
like
be the
that.
role model, in the process. So that's a very important process. And she is also talking about, I call it breaking generational curse, which is I'm working on that in my community. And that's an important thing, Lilian. I know that, especially in a lot of community in Africa, that we don't think about, this thinking ahead for the next generation. And that's still, there's still a lot of education to be done. And I think that's, it give us here, Sabrina give us here an example, on how it can be done, and we can actually implement for anybody, listening from those communities, can implement them easily, adapting them to their own environment. So that's really, been a lot of learning. I hope, everybody is clear about, their what they need to do to get their financial kit ready. Unfortunately, we're getting close to the end, and I really wanted to ask you, Sabrina. I mean, this is an amazing work, and I can see that you're very fascinated about, what you're doing. So, what really next, in terms of your legacy, and what you really want to leave beyond, doing all this work.
And I'm glad you asked me that. So it is about a legacy, which is why I became an author. I do a lot of work in the community. I want to show this book for a reason. This is called Top 25 Change Makers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a legacy. I am
Mm-hmm.
one of 25 authors that participated in this book to
Mm-hmm.
encourage, enlighten, and empower others on move past, how to move past impacts in your life, roadblocks in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my focus is to help the community overcome. I love what your guest just said, generational curse. There's some generations, and this is called educating a community. They may make a comment like, well, my mom and my daddy never had life insurance, or my mom and my daddy, we never did anything to help our kids go through college. Well, my mom and my dad, so as a family, we don't do that. That's not right thinking. As,
Mm-hmm.
as your guest just mentioned, we want to break the generational curse. We want to now become the heroes in our family. We want to be the one that they look up to and say, Mom, Sabrina, you did it. My kids look to me now. I love that, breaking the generation. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
My kids look to me now as an example. They have their financial game plan in place. My children have living benefit policies in place. My children have investment vehicles in place because I set the example for that. They have ideas about their future and what they're going to do for their children. My daughter presently is a mom, and she has financial plans in place for her children. She's already set up things for her kids. So you know what? It's the footsteps that we leave. So
Mm-hmm.
as parents, we want to ask ourselves, what kind of financial footprint are we leaving for our children? Are we setting the example? Are we the heroes? Have we put a plan in place financially that we've set the example, and that our husbands and wives and children and grandchildren will not only follow, but benefit financially by taking a few moments to put this financial game plan in place and protecting our families? I'm very passionate about that.
I can imagine, I can see it, and I like the question. So, what kind of financial, plan footprint are we leaving to the next generation? And we think about
Yes.
everything, but these are, key thing that, strangely enough, we forget, to plan. We forget put this footprint so that, this blueprint that the next generation can follow. And that's really, we have to start now. We have to break the curse,
Yes.
generational curse. And I see that Liliane has another comment. She's, asking herself, would our plan work for people in Africa? We can make them work, Liliane. It's just a matter of, understanding what are the gaps, and really fill those gaps. And I think that's the way I see it. And
Yes.
getting example from other countries and seeing how certain tools and certain strategy can work, and try them, will be, the best way to try to put things, to grow in the financial area for certain community in Africa. So I think it's possible. We just have to, look at what's missing, what are the gaps, and what do we need to do. And it comes back as well to the education, the education system, and the education at home. What can we do to change this mindset and get people to use the right tools and the right strategy to break this, this curse that we're talking about. So thank you so much, Sabrina, for sharing, your knowledge. And it's been an amazing insight. You brought us, so much information, financial information. And I think Liliane would agree. Just want to know, how do people stay in contact with you if they want to continue the conversation? Because as you can imagine, we can't do it in 1 hour. There's a lot
Right.
more that you can share. So just to know how people can, stay in contact and get more information, or if they need your service, how do they reach out?
I'm so happy you asked me that. I'm going to be putting on a webinar, and all of your listeners are invited to join that webinar. That information will be posted on my website, and it's
Mm-hmm.
my name, sabrinaprotic.com.
Mm-hmm.
She's got it
Okay,
up there, sabrinaprotic.com. There you can fill out a contact form. I will be posting the webinar on that website, but it'll be a free workshop, a free webinar. We'll cover these tools. I would be love to stay in contact with Lillian. She has a lot of questions, and I can supply her with some information that she can use in her communities over there in Africa. I'd be more than willing to work with her on that. And
Mm-hmm.
because it's all about helping, it's all about
Mm-hmm.
educating. Education in the financial arena is free.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be charging for financial education. It's free. Let's empower people and give them the tools they need so that they can build a better financial future for themselves and their families. So you can reach me there at sabrinaprotic.com, and I'll be more than happy to communicate with you and have you participate in some workshops that we do. So regardless of what country you're in, I'll be more than willing to help you put a plan together for your country.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who's been able to tune in today live. Liliane says she'll be in touch for sure, and you'll have the opportunity to continue the conversation with her. And I thank you again for your time, and for the knowledge, that experience that you've shared today. And I wish you, to have a great day, because I think you've just started the day with the show today.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's been amazing on our side. So thank you so much, and thanks to the audience. So I will be back for another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show on Friday, and I will have an interesting guest. She went through COVID. She's been in the coma. She recovered. She's been on the platform already before, and she's coming to give us an update, and share, her own experience, and how she managed to fully recover. But it took her quite a long time, so it's going to be an interesting episode again. So thank you, Florence, as well, for being here. And so I see you all on Friday for this new episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show. Thank you so much, and see you all pretty soon.